So I'm just going to show when I have my render out of Blender, I'm going to bring that into Photoshop, and then I'll also bring in my color ID pass or clown pass. So what you're going to want to do is drag it in, and I'm holding shift while I'm dragging that in so it stays central. It doesn't shift to another part of the image. So yeah, now we have these easier selections for pulling out, certain objects. So yeah, at the start of every process, like I'll generally start in the background, so I'll work my way from the background up to the front. So yeah, I'd separate out this white part first. So yeah, I just go around here. I'm just doing this rough show as an example. Let's get rid of this bit. So yeah, I just create a layer behind that, and then I can quickly color in the layer at the back here. And then later on this image, I I merged these together and had it all like more implemented. Now sometimes like your layers might blend together with the export you get from Blender. So you can see here, like these two colors are like really close together. They're actually different colors, like slightly different blues. So you have two options. You can go in manually. You can go in manually and do it this way. Get rid of it like that. Like it still saves you a good bit of time. I don't have to go around and select the rest of it to get this foreground piece. And I'll get rid of this bit as well. So yeah, you can do it that way, and then I'll do a layer via copy, and then I'll have this foreground piece on its own, isolated, and it's at the front of the image, so I'm going to keep that at the top of my layer stack. Now alternatively, say you've got these colors that are close together, if you come up here, if you're using the magic wand tool, if you come up here, press maybe like 2, see if this works. Yeah, you can see now 2 has it's not picking up that color now. It's being really strict with the selection, the tolerance. So basically, the lower the tolerance, the less shit Photoshop is going to take, and it's gonna let you keep those selections nice and clean and not pick up extra colors. So yeah, that's your other option if you're doing that. So yeah, generally I'll spend maybe an hour getting all my pieces separated out. I tried to keep it as simple as possible, like the water will be a layer then as well. And I'll just try to organize it in a way that, the layers at the front are at the top of the layer stack. Like I'll come in here and just check if I have to clean up any parts, because sometimes it's not perfect. So you can see there, like I just need to clean that edge up a little bit. Same here, we're losing a little bit of that, or we're just getting a little bit of extra shadow detail that we don't want there. So yeah, generally this is the process once you bring it in. Maybe spend an hour, well, as long as it takes you while you're getting used to it if you're new to this. And yeah, I'm using shift to add to my selection. So if I'm using this lasso tool here, if I hold shift I can add to it. If I hold alt, you'll see this minus beside the lasso tool, and that's going to take away from your selection. So depending what you want to do. And then I'm also, so another trick is, okay, I want to take a little bit off this, so I want to do a minus. If I do minus and then I press alt again, it's going to give me a straight line. So you can mix that straight line selection with the curved selection if I hold alt. So from when I pressed alt here again, you get this curve, or the straight selection. And then I'm back to the curve. I let go of Alt, I press Alt again. So that's one to try as well. And then yeah, when you're doing your layer via copy, just make sure you're on your original render. So layer via copy, so I have the water on the layer now. So yeah, that's the general idea for when you're bringing your image into Photoshop and getting it all started and organized. So I will see you in the next part. So guys, I've sped up this footage a little bit and I'll be giving an overview for the rest of this image. So yeah, you see here I've added in the waterfalls and I'm just working on the eyes at the minute. The typical Mr. Suicide Sheep look. I'll be going through how I added the waterfalls in a little bit. I just used some photo textures for those. And I'm just trying to reuse the statue-esque X shapes that make the sheep's eyes. I'm just trying to implement those into the statue so they don't stand out too much, but you can make them out enough. So it's a careful balance of playing with the values. I've also darkened up the foreground a little bit, so the elements that I separated out, I just would have used a hue saturation layer on those. And the water, I made the water more saturated and added a bit of a deeper blue to that. So you can see here now in the background, I'm getting rid of that 3D look. So I've turned off my waterfall layer and I'm just, this is a case of going through a little bit zoomed in, and yeah, just getting rid of that 3D look. I'm using a chalk brush at the minute, so you can just see some of the remnants of the rough geometry that I had from Blender. So yeah, just going through and smoothing that out and repeating that process to merge the background together as well. I was adding a little bit of that blue light to add some interest into the shadows. This is another handy technique here, what I'm doing. So I've copied a piece of the background that I like and I've pasted that into another area. But now I'm gonna darken that down. It's, it further into the corner of the image, so obviously we don't want the attention to be there. But yeah, this is a handy way, if you grab a piece like here, I'm distorting it into place and I've masked it out and I'm painting back in the areas that I want to be shown. And then yeah, balancing the curves, and then here I'm using the clone stamp tool a little bit. So I've sampled from a little bit on the area on the right and I'm mixing that in with the chalk brush. So yeah, it's just a case of playing around with this, reusing that technique of masking in some areas that I like again. I thought this was a cool little shape here, so I wanted to reuse that. And you wouldn't really recognize that I've reused it from another area of the image because I've rotated it, and then even adding a tiny bit of slight difference to it will yeah, the viewer won't know any better. But you're being efficient and you're saving yourself that bit of time. I was also using the mixer brush a little bit there, so I have a few mixer brushes in my library to the right, so that's handy for taking down some of the detail. So yeah, just working into the waterfall now. I want to be able to see this doorway, like just to add a little bit of the water isn't quite hitting there. So this is basically how I'll add these photos. I literally grabbed this waterfall from this picture, I think it's somewhere in Iceland. I'll make a duplicate of that layer and I'll darken down the duplicate and add a bit of a shadow to it, and then I'll mask out the the part of it where I want the light to be, so the light on the layer beneath will come through, and then we have that shadowed area of the waterfall, and then I end up merging those two layers together. So it's a very quick way of getting some nice shadow, but then I'll still continue to paint on top of that. like you're not finished there. You still need to go in and make those nice shapes. So my thinking here is now, so this water is coming down and it's hitting this area in front of this entrance. So it's going to be hitting the ground. It's going to be splashing everywhere. It's going to be running down these steps. So I'm just trying to find a nice balance of where the water is flowing. I'm just trying to make, just get those colors and values and the relationships between those correct. And I'm trying to get nice flowing shapes now on the bit of, there's like a little bit of a sand embankment there. So, and I'm just trying to think of how the water might flow off that. So yeah, you can see here now I'm lassoing out the piece of the stairs just to separate that a little bit, to create a little bit of mist behind it before it was getting a little bit lost. And yeah, I use masks a whole bunch. You saw there again, I was taking away a little bit from the where that doorway area is. And here you can see I'm using the clone stamp tool now, where I like those little it's like those frothy bits of water that are down near the bottom. I'm just putting those in on a different layer, and I might merge them down then if I like them, and I can, I'll use the hue saturation or the curves to try and match it into what's already there. So yeah, and then the smudge tool as well, I combine that with the chalk brush and the mixer brush and the clone stamp tool. And yeah, just adding some extra little detail to the waterfall over on the right. So moving on to the next little part now, I've added in some monkey photographs. This is the first one. So yeah, I'm just trying to find a nice little pose that isn't too distracting but will add, to encourage our eye to look over to the right. So just getting rid of some of the photo detail, and I've simplified down the photograph, and I'm trying to get a nice bit of that bluish light that you'll find in some of these photographs of these spider monkeys, and then a little bit of rim light to separate them out from the background. So you can see here I've brought in a photograph of another spider monkey, and I'm just going to get rid of all the extra detail that's around them. So yeah, you can just basically use the lasso tool to quickly go around and Control X to get rid of those. So I'm just going to play around with the positioning of him for a moment. Sometimes you have to experiment with these little photographs and see if you can get the pose to work, but I end up scrapping that and just painting in my own monkey, where I'd like to have I have these two guys are kind of grouped together, and then the other guy's a little bit away, so it just creates this nice little balance. So on the next part now, I'm bringing in some palm trees from a photo pack from photobash.org. So when I bring these in, I'm just trying to find a position for them that's going to help with the scale, and then when I bring them in, I'm collapsing the layer down so I can paint on top of it then, and simplifying the detail with the mixer brush. And then because this is in a bit of a shadowed area, I've darkened it down, and I'll be adding in some blue cyans, and then again, just trying to implement a sort of vegetation into the sand at the base. So yeah, I bring in quite a few of these photographs from the palm tree photo pack. It's really handy. So I play around with trying to get the position of this piece of vegetation here. So I'm trying to frame. I'm trying to use it in a way that's framing and it's not too distracting, and it's just giving a little bit more sense of detail and what this environment would be like. And then I've gone into that and I'm cutting away from it, and I'm adding in, darkening it down, continuing to play with the positioning of it so that it just creates a nice shape there that fits in with the environment. And the next bit here, I'm just adding some atmosphere on a layer on top of the palm trees to separate that out from the back. So I'll repeat that around the image. And the next bit now, I'm trying to find a nice texture for the statues. So I've brought in a piece of the Sphinx, and I'm going to play around with the layer style and the color modes. This is always, I always use a different process for this. It changes from image to image. It's really a case of playing and experimenting. I thought this piece would match really well with the base of the image, since it's already quite close to the Sphinx pose. So it was a case of putting this on overlay mode and masking out the bits that I don't like, and then I'll end up painting on top of that then. And I'm just trying to make sure that the perspective on it fits with what I have there already. So yeah, this is a hugely experimental part. Like sometimes you might nail this in 20 minutes, another time it will frustrate you so much that it could end up taking you a couple of hours, which it took me a little while here. It took me a while to find the right balance, but this is generally the process it will go through. You have to just go through the struggles to get it to the place where you think it looks right and fits in with the rest of the image. And because these are the focal point as well, you want them to have a bit more detail, a bit more interest than the rest of the image. So that needs to be reflected in the texture and how the texture is applied. So when I'm painting on top of those photograph layers that I bring in, I'm using that mixer brush again for those painterly effects, and the smudge tool. You can see here I'm using the layer style plus overlay. I'm getting these really interesting whites. So I'm running with that idea, and I'm using a mixer brush then on top of that, just to get rid of a little bit of the photograph detail. So yeah, again, it's just hugely experimental. You don't always know how it will go and if it will work. I did delete a few of these layers because they just weren't working. And I might even if I've painted in a part of it, I might mask it back out and only end up using 5% of it. So you can see here I've brought in this mad looking photograph. He's got these like diamond encrusted details in his face. I thought maybe that could be cool in the crown of the sheep, but I ended up scrapping that idea. It wasn't really working. It wasn't really fitting in with the brief and the typical design of these guys. So I've ended up bringing in this kind of cracked stone and using an overlay layer then, and lowering the opacity, and I'm using a mask then, and then I'm painting on top of that. So yeah, it's really the same process with bringing in these photographs. And then I'm trying to figure out this transition point between the snout and the fluffy bit of the sheep's head. Will that be creating much of a cast shadow? Will it not? Will it be blending in a bit more? These are the questions that I'm asking myself when I'm working on these parts of the images. So I'm trying to get a little bit of colour variation in there. I've added some reds and little slight hints of blue, just to break up that pattern of the sandy look. And yeah, don't forget to flip your image, guys. It always gives you a little bit of shock when you see it first. If you haven't done it in a while and you flip it, you're like, oh god, this looks so different. You just spot problems straight away. So it's a great way to keep your eye fresh. So getting there now with the detail on the snout, the little cracks added to the overall aesthetic, I think. And then yeah, you can see here I'm using that clone stamp tool. I'm copying in parts from this photograph that might work onto a new layer, and I can mask them in then if I like them. So I'm just trying to give the statue a bit more structure, or maybe it's a little bit more damaged. So the clone stamp tool is very handy for that kind of thing. But it's never, you know, that's never going to get you to 100%. It might get you 50 or 60% of the way. You still need to go in and paint on top of that, or manipulate the photograph in some way, or simplify it. Very rarely will it completely work straight away. There'll always be some form of editing. So a few color balance and lightness adjustments were put on top of the image now. So I flick this on and off, but it's still on for the minute. So I'm getting there towards the end of the statue, and once I'm fairly happy with that, I'll try and reuse as much as I can onto the other statue. So now we're detailing a bit more of the atmosphere in front of the statues, and I'm adding some mist. You know, I've separated those little pillar elements out, so they're on their own layer now, and I'm able to go in and paint in some fog behind those. Again, just, you're always trying to create that sense of atmosphere and depth in your image, and that's a very handy way of creating it. I've brought in some more vegetation from those photo packs. I thought it might be nice to have that around the base of those collapsed pillars. So I'll bring those in, get rid of the trees, and I'm just trying to find a nice balance using the hue saturation layer adjustment. I'll also use the median adjustment. I'll probably only put it on 1, so that's in your filters. Under noise, you'll get the median filter, so that's very handy for simplifying photographs. So I've moved my attention onto the water now. So the next thing I was thinking, it'd be really cool to get some lilies in there, and we might have these nice pinks to break up all the blue and green and orange that will contrast nicely against those colors. So I'm bringing in photographs here, and I'm trying to find photographs that are particularly close to the perspective that I have already. So it just gives me less work in the end. And yeah, bringing in these lilies now and painting those in, and I'm reusing as much of the lily pads as I can. Obviously when they're a little bit further away, they're going to be smaller, and I'm getting some cool happy accents when I'm playing with the layer styles. Like, they were adding, the layer styles were giving me these cool blues and purples in the water, so I painted that in then, and I went with that and painted it in on top. And then yeah, some of these lily pads in the front here, they're a bit more in the shadow, so I want to reflect that. You don't want these really bright shapes because they're going to distract the viewer's eye, so I'm keeping those in shadow in the front and just adding a bit more blue to those. So I've kept them all nice and clean now, and I moved on to the water. I've just created a new layer on top of that, and I'm going through the layer and getting rid of the photo-esque remnants from the render, and I'm just going in and trying to make it a bit more painterly and reflect a bit more of the environment into that water. So obviously the waterfall's in front of this area here, so it's going to be creating more of that purple reflective property. Same here with the pillar, just trying to break that up a little bit. So yeah, this is a case of just, I've grabbed this mixer brush, and I'm just adding this extra layer of detail to the water to take that 3D look away. And it makes a huge difference by the time you spend like 10-15 minutes on the water and you look back. So when I'm happy with that stage, my attention has returned to the lilies. So now I'm trying to find a nice position for all of these pink flowers. and I'm putting in I've added that detail around the image, and I've moved on to the monkeys now. So I've brought in a little photograph of this cute little guy here in the front, and I'm painting in his hair, using the hair actually to point towards where I want you to look, and even like just grabbing little details like the ear from a monkey and bringing that in to fit onto your image. That can really help. So when I'm doing these types of parts of the image where I'm adding in little characters or little creatures, I'll make sure my photograph's like right beside it, so I can try to replicate the colours and the fur texture and detail as handily as possible. So I've brought in 3 photographs. They all have varying lights and varying colours of furs, but they're similar in a way. And even like how the fur is coming off this guy's elbow, I'll try and reuse that. And yeah, with this guy then, how it's coming off his butt, these real fluffy bits that are being hit by the light are really cool. So I'll try and replicate that into the photo as well. And again, I really like their little haircuts at the top, the way it sort of flows forward. So I'm trying to replicate that. So yeah, coming to the end of the process now, guys. I really hope that you found this helpful. This part was really an overview of how I'd go through this process. So yeah, thanks very much, and I hope you enjoyed. Take care.